I said, right. One of the things that you're going to notice and pay attention that you got to pay attention to is that most of the deities of antiquity are usually Sumerian or Egyptian deities. To be 100% honest with you, they just morph and change names from culture to culture. But usually, with enough deep digging, I don't even want to say deep digging, to be honest with you, but just enough a scant amount of research, you'll find that most of these deities that you see worship go back to ancient Samaria or uh, or Egypt. You know what I'm talking about? This stuff is before Babylon. You know what I'm saying? Everybody like to point stuff at Babylon, but Babylon is taking deities from other places, mainly Egypt and Samaria. So, of course, Anubis, the god of funerary rites, the protector of graves, the guide to the underworld. He was depicted as a canine or a man with a canine head. Like many ancient deities, Egyptian deities, Anubis assumed different roles in various contexts, depicted as the protector of graves in the first dynasty, also an embalmer. Then he was replaced by Osiris in his role as Lord of the Underworld. One of his prominent roles was as a god who ushered souls into the afterlife. He attended the weighing scale during the weighing of the heart, in which it was determined whether a soul would be allowed to enter the realm of the dead. Anubis is one of the most frequently depicted and mentioned gods in the Egyptian pantheon. However, no relevant myth involved him. Anubis was depicted black, a color that symbolized regeneration, life, and the soil of the Nile River, and the discoloration of the corpse after embalming. Anubis is associated with his brother Wepawet, another Egyptian god portrayed with a dog's head in canine form, but with gray or white fur. Historians assume that the two figures were eventually combined. Anubis's female counterpart is Anaput, and his daughter is the serpent goddess Kebechet. See it forth as some historical things. Anubis was portrayed in full animal form with a jackal head and body. A jackal god, probably Anubis, is depicted in stone inscriptions from the reigns of Hor-Aha Dahir and other pharaohs of the first dynasty. Since pre-dynastic Egypt, when the dead were buried in shallow graves, jackals had been strongly associated with cemeteries because they were scavengers, which uncovered human bodies and ate their flesh. In the spirit of fighting like with like, a jackal was chosen to protect the dead because a common problem and a cause of concern must have been the digging up of bodies shortly after burial by jackals and other wild dogs, which lived on the margins of cultivation. In the Old Kingdom, Anubis was the most important god of the dead. He was replaced in that role by Osiris during the Middle Kingdom. In the Roman era, which started in 30 BC, tomb paintings depict him holding the hand of deceased persons to guide them to Osiris. The parentage of Anubis varied between myths, times, and sources. In early mythology, he was portrayed as the son of Ra. The coffin texts, which were first written in the first intermediate period, Anubis is the son either of the cow-head goddess Hesat or the cat-head Bastet. Another tradition depicted him as the son of Ra and Nephthys. The Greek Plutarch reported a tradition that Anubis was the illegitimate son of Nephthys and Osiris, but that he was adopted by Osiris' wife, Isis. George Hart sees the story as an attempt to incorporate the independent deity Anubis into the Osirian pantheon, and the Egyptian papyrus from the Roman period simply called Anubis the son of Isis. In Nubia, Anubis was seen as the husband of his mother Nephthys. And it says the Osirian pantheon is the most elaborate and influential story in ancient Egyptian mythology concerning the murder of the god Osiris, a primeval king of Egypt, and its consequences. Osiris's murder, his brother Set usurps his throne. Meanwhile, Osiris' wife restores her husband's body, allowing them to posthumously conceive their son Horus. The remainder of the story focuses on Horus. Now, we've talked about that before, but one of the things that the elements that you should be able to pay attention to is that this deity, it was created because jackals were eating dead bodies buried in shallow graves. So when you turn around and you look at this as the framework of the human mind, they created a story to make a jackal a god and say he would be, they took this, as you said, fight like with like. This is what it's done. You have to slow your mind down and pay attention to these things. When Paul tells you in Romans chapter 1 that they worship the creation more than the creator, you have to pay attention to these small elements. Now, Tartak. I think we exhausted because it wasn't a lot of information about Buddy. I done missed my whole page. I'm sorry. Let me get back over there. That camera cutting off threw off my whole doggone equilibrium. I ain't gonna lie to you. Now let's talk about Nergal, and we'll be able to find out who he go back to. It's been a while since we looked at these people. Now Nergal is a Mesopotamian deity from the early dynastic to the Neo-Babylonian times, with few attestations indicating that his cult survived into the period of the Achaemenid domination. He was primarily associated with war, death, and disease, and has been depicted as the god of inflicted death. He reigned over the Mesopotamian underworld, and depending on the myth, either on behalf of his parents Enlil and Ninlil, or in later periods, the result of his marriage with the goddess Arashkagal. Originally, either Matamim, a goddess connected to frost, or Last, sometimes assumed to the minor medicine goddess, which was regarded as his wife. Through other traditions existed too. Enlil. Enlil is one of the Mesopotamian gods, a Sumerian deity, and some of you may be familiar with the Anunnaki. Some of you may be familiar with Sumerian tablets, and yes, ma'am. And we probably go into some of those things in greater detail. The Lord knows. But Enlil, the ancient Mesopotamian god associated with wind, air, earth, and storms. He is first attested as the chief deity of the Sumerian pantheon, but was later worshipped by the Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians, and Hurrians. Enlil's primary center of worship was the Ekur temple in the city of Nippur, which was believed to have been built by Enlil himself and was regarded as the mooring rope of heaven and earth. He is also sometimes referred to in Sumerian texts as Nunamir. According to one Sumerian hymn, Enlil himself was so holy that not even the other gods could look upon him. Enlil rose to prominence during the 24th century BC with the rise of Nippur. His cult fell into decline after Nippur was sacked by the Elamites in 1230 BC, and he was eventually supplanted as the chief god of the Mesopotamian pantheon by the Babylonian national god Marduk. Now, Marduk will come into effect in just a moment. This is something about the Sumerian pantheon, by the way. It is generally agreed that Sumerian civilization began at some point between c. 4500 and 4000 BC, but the earliest historical records only date to around 2900 BC. The Sumerians originally practiced a polytheistic religion with anthropomorphic deities. And if you don't know what that is, that's the attribution of human traits, emotions, and intentions to non-human entities. It is considered to be an innate tendency of human psychology. Personification is the related attribution of human form and characteristics to abstract concepts such as nations, emotions, and natural forces such as seasons and weather. Both have ancient roots as storytelling and artistic devices. Most cultures have traditional fables with anthropomorphized animals as characters. People also have routinely attributed human emotions and behavioral traits to wild as well as domesticated animals. Now, with that being said, these anthropomorphic deities represented cosmic and terrestrial forces in their world. The earliest Sumerian literature of the 3rd millennium BC identifies 4 primary deities: An, Enlil, Nihursag, and Enki. These early deities were believed to occasionally behave mischievously towards each other, but were generally viewed as being involved in cooperative creating ordering. During the middle and 3rd millennium BC, Sumerian society became more urbanized, and as a result of this, Sumerian deities began to lose their original associations with nature and became the patrons of various cities. Each Sumerian city-state had its own specific patron deity who was believed to protect the city and defend its interests. Lists of large numbers of Sumerian deities have been found. The order of importance and relationship between the deities have been examined. during the study of cuneiform tablets. During the 2000 BCs, the Sumerians were conquered by the Akkadians. The Akkadians syncretized their own gods with the Sumerian ones, causing Sumerian religion to take on a Semitic collaboration. Male deities became dominant, and the gods completely lost their original associations with natural phenomena. People began to view the gods as living in a feudal society with a class structure. Powerful deities, such as Enki and Inanna, became seen as receiving their power from the chief god Enlil. The majority of the Sumerian deities belonged to a classification called Anuna, where 7 deities, including Enlil and Inanna, belonged to a group of underworld judges known as the Anunnaki, offspring of An plus Ki. During the 3rd dynasty of Ur, the Sumerian pantheon was said to include 60 times 60, 3,600 deities. Enlil was the god of the air, wind, and storm. He was also the chief god of the Sumerian pantheon and the patron deity of the city Nippur. His primary consort was Enlil, the goddess of the south wind, who was of the patron deities Nippur, who was believed to reside in the same temple as Enlil. Ninurta was the son of Enlil and Enlil. He was worshipped as the god of war and agriculture and one of the Sumerian wind gods. He was the patron deity of Gursu and one of the patron deities of Lagash. Sumerian cities had their own gods, but acknowledged the supremacy of Enlil. Enlil was the god of Enki, was the god of fresh water, male fertility, and knowledge. Now, I have to stop right now because it's Wednesday and I can't go as long as I would like. Now, again, with Nagarl, his major cult center was Kutha. His planet is Mars, lion-headed, sword, a lion, a bull. His parents were Enlil and Enlil. That's why we just read through all that. And his consort was Las. Now, again, as you just already read, because these people were conquered by you say you think you got Thoth in the Emerald Tablet? For sure. As you can see, is that once the Sumerians were taken over, these people just merged their gods. The main proponent of you understand is that they're worshiping the same gods from culture to culture. Now, you just heard the main god that we want to talk about this evening was Marduk, and how Marduk is going to relate to Genesis chapter 6. Now let's talk about Succoth Benoth. And for those of you who remember Succoth Benoth, you know, you could drop that in the chat if you would, of what that's about. So good old Succoth Benoth. What does it mean? The daughter's booth. This was an Assyrian and Babylonian deity worshipped by the Babylonians in Samaria. And it also is the booths of the daughters or the brothels, idolatrous tents for impure purposes. So when you read in your law, when he tell you not to bring the price of a whore or a dog in the house of Yahuwah, it's because of places like Succoth Benoth. Succoth Benoth did not start in Samaria. Succoth Benoth had already been around. It was a place of idolatrous worship where people got freaky, which is basically, for lack of a better term, for lack of a, not back a better example, I mean, truth be told, it's the origin of your strip clubs and whorehouses. So most people don't realize it, that in another time period in society, a strip club would have been a house of worship. You would have worshiped another deity in there. So you think you just going in there making it rain and to tip the strippers, or maybe you going in there for the Waynes. Honey mustard, if you would. But in reality, you going into the place where they worship Marduk. Yeah, man, that's what they did back in those times. You dig? Let's take some more information on Succoth Benoth, if you would. Give me a second. I already got it queued up. And then I'm going to read something out of this book. But we had to do all of that. What is Succoth Benoth? It's the Babylonian deity, as we've already established. The booths are the girls. Succoth Benoth may be a corruption of the name of Marduk's consort. And I'm going to mispronounce it. Serapenitu or Zer-Benitu, which means sea creating one. And they say the literal meaning of Succoth Benoth is impossible to determine. Now, of course, The Booths of Daughters, the Babylonian deity again of the former kingdom to Samaria. In the ninth year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in Halal and harbor by the river of Gozan and in the city of Medes, resetting a large number of the population. And of course, we don't want to read certain stuff that we've already read, but I'll just read it anyway. The men from these 5 cities made its own gods and set them up shrines of the land, mixing it with the worship of Yahuwah. The men of Babylon made Succoth Benoth, the men of Kuthath, Nergal, the men of Hamath, Ashima, and the Avites, Nibahaz, and Tartak, and the Zephrathites, Amdramelech, and Anamelech. So again, Amdramelech is the god of the seraphim, commonly identified with the twin cities of Sippar and Yehurim, and Sippar and Ammonum on the banks of Euphrates north of Babylon. It translates to magnificent king. He was universally accepted as the original. I don't want that information. That's not good. We want stuff that's important. In demonology, like many pagan gods, Amdramelech is considered a demon. And some Judeo-Christian traditions, so he appears in John Milton's Paradise Lost, where he's a fallen angel along with Asmodeus is vanquished by Uriel and Raphael. According to Colin DePlancy's book on demonology, Infernal Dictionary, Amdramelech became the president of the Senate of the Demons. He is also the chancellor of hell and supervisor of Satan's wardrobe. He is generally depicted with a human torso and a mule's head and a peacock tail and the limbs of a mule or a peacock. In Ars Gotia, he is known as Angelophus. Now, in the Talmud, it teaches that Amdramelech was an idol of the seraphim in the shape of an ass that is to be concluded from his name, which is the compound to carry, and the king. The heathens worshipped as God, the same animal which carried their burdens. Rashi's explanation of this passage, which interprets distinguished by carrying, still another explanation of the name ascribes to the god the form of a peacock and derives the name from Adar and Melech, or magnificent king. Now, the other nigga attached to him, Anamelech, he is a lunar deity worshipped by the seraphim in an Assyrian town. Some scholars have related him to the Mesopotamian god Anu. Oh, I didn't even see all this here. Well, it's 2 different deities, Joseph, An and Ki. But like I said, we'll have to go more into the Sumerian deities, and this is why. As you just heard, what the people in the land did, who were not Israelites when they were brought in the land, the worship of Yahuwah ended up being mixed with the worship of these gods. So you'll begin to see things. See, one of the things that we mistakenly do, right, is we will equate what man has done with the word or what man has done with the rights of Yahuwah by mixing them with other things and then attribute that to Yahuwah. One of the things that as an Israelite that you cannot just dismiss is the fact that your people worship other gods and then try to incorporate some of those things in their worship to Yahuwah. Now, Yahuwah accepting those things is a whole nother conversation, but that does not mean that your ancestors did not do this. You know what I'm saying? Because they did do this. This is historical record. This can be found. It's undeniable. There's no need for you to act like they didn't or try to come up with some cockamamie excuse for finding something in the text that you don't, well, finding something that matches with something that these ancient people were doing that you don't like because it makes you feel some type of way. You have to understand and know you can't attribute to Yahuwah what the people were doing because they did do this. Case in point, the fact that sometimes some years you have 13 months and these dudes can't explain to you why you got 13 months because the book don't talk about you having 13 months because it's the literal mixing in of this lunar deity that we're talking about just now. Doggone Anamelech, because they mixed and worshiped that when they came out of Babylon. So you don't even realize that a lot of things that you Israelites don't want to hear that's standing outside watching for the moon to count time. That man never told you to do that. You got that from Babylon and you still doing it. You know what I'm talking about? And you think it's biblical and nobody can show you where that's at in the text. They have to make stuff up. Because they have to make stuff up because they don't want to acknowledge that some of your ancestors co-opted the worship of the Babylonians and came in the land with it and then perpetuated it. And then you still doing it. You know what I'm talking about? But you thinking you could dodge with it when that man never told you to go outside and wait for no moon. If you don't see the moon, then the month don't start. That man ain't never told you that. Nan time. Oh, don't feel bad, Emma. Emma Sharon, a lot of people done did it. You know what I'm saying? Ain't nothing to feel bad about. And y'all know, because we've had these conversations with at least the people here in the city. No, because you got to ask yourself, where did you get this concept from? Where did you get it from? Why did you do it? Why did you accept it? Did you look into it? Do you know where it came from? Yeah. It's a lot of stuff Israelites be doing that they got from the Jewish people, whether they want to accept it or not. And you worshiping Babylonian deities and performing Sumerian Anunnaki rites, and you don't know it. You know what I'm talking about? And then you'll talk about these things when somebody pointed out to you, because you don't want to accept the fact that you don't know what you're talking about. They say Easter eggs came from Babylon. Yeah, 9 times out of 10, it came from Samaria and Egypt. He said that's why he said in Exodus 23, no mention of other gods is akin to a one. No. Now I'll read to you what that means when you see the Hebrew word for that. You know what I'm talking about? I got you on that, but that's a good catch though. You know what I'm saying? And I'm gonna go over the time a little bit because one, I lost a few minutes, and two, I do want to read out of this book that Emma was kind enough to send that is going to a lot, because before we can even, what in the world just happened? Oh, you got a phone call and it made the thing go away. Oh. But now I don't know how to bring that back up. Oh, here you go. All right. And because I don't think we spent. It makes me wonder about the fringes, the border of blue, but the gold tassels that hang from it are not a part of. And 9 times out of 10, that probably came from the mixing a Babylonian or Sumerian culture. To be 100% honest with you, you know what I'm saying. I ain't gonna lie to you, and I know Mama Steph know this because we've had conversations in rooms about this. A lot of Israelites perform Sumerian and Babylonian practices. They just too proud to acknowledge that that's what they're doing, because they don't want to acknowledge where it come from, because then they'll have to acknowledge that the people who taught it to them didn't know what the hell they were talking about. He said, I discovered the ones most brews wear are Assyrian and Babylon, and there it is. And there it is. See, that's why people are open to cross worshiping these days. Comparing, indeed, it is. Now, these are not things to kick yourself about. This is part of the reason why a lot of these people don't want you to venture off into other cultures and societies and see how these people have actually mixed the worship of Yahuwah with the worship of these ancient deities, because they don't want to stop doing whatever it is that they're doing. You know what I'm saying? Because dudes will argue with you that it's 364 or 365 days in a year, and the book says 360. You know what I'm saying? The book don't say any of these things. You know what I'm talking about? So you have to know these things. You have to understand these things, and never, like I told you before, right? You don't want to venture off into things if you're not solidified in what it is that you believe. You could be tossed to and fro. You know what I'm saying? But nevertheless, y'all are adults, and you should be well versed enough. And if we quote unquote dealing with an ancient Near East religion, quote unquote, you know, the Bible, but really the Book of Yahuwah, then you should be aware of ancient Near East civilization all the way around the board. You know what I'm saying? All the way around the board, just for no other reason but to be informed. I'm going to tell you something, man. You have to watch people who do not have a desire for you to be informed. That's a red flag. And then that red flag could be representative of a multitude of things. But one of them guaranteed is manipulation. Now, whatever they're trying to manipulate you in, I can't answer that. But anybody who does not want you to be informed is seeking to manipulate you and control you in some type of fashion. Anyone who is secure and solidified in what they're instructed and being a quote unquote leader and a guide of people has no fear, care, or concern of having an informed congregation and populace. That is of no offense to him. You need to pay attention to people who do not want you to be informed or have problems with you asking them questions. You know what I'm talking about? You got to pay attention to that type of stuff. You can't just ignore that and just toss that to the side like it don't mean nothing. You know what I'm saying? And this ain't something I'm telling you just to tell you this here. I held this position since I was a child. And you know why? Because my mama told me don't take nobody's word for nothing, to validate that information for yourself. So you shouldn't take nobody's word for anything. You should get up off your sorry behind and go read a goddamn book. You know what I'm saying? Not watch no YouTube video, but go read a book. You know what I'm talking about? Do it the old school way, man. They're good, man. They got plenty PDFs out here, man. You ain't even got to buy the book. If you can sit on your phone and watch videos on your phone, you can sit on your phone and read a book. There's too much information out here, man, to be willfully ignorant. You know what I'm saying? It's just too much. There's no excuse for it. Yes, indeed. How else would you know what to watch for? Absolutely. There's no excuse for it. None whatsoever. Now, what was I just looking at? That's right. He was a lunar deity. His name, Anu, is based on the belief that his name is Anu is king. And more recent scholarship understands the initial element of the name represents the masculine counterpart of the goddess Anat, as attested in Amorite personal names. Of course, Anu is the divine personification of the sky, king of the gods, and ancestor of the many deities in ancient Mesopotamian religion. He is regarded as the source of both divine and human kingship and opens the enumeration of deities in many Mesopotamian texts. At the same time, his role was largely passive and he was not commonly worshipped. It is sometimes proposed that the Anana temple located in Uruk originally belonged to him rather than Anana. But while he is attested as one of his divine inhabitants, there is no evidence that the main deity of the temple ever changed. Anana was early associated with its earliest sources. After it declined, a new theological system developed in the same city under Seleucid rule, resulting in Anu being refined as an active deity. As a result, he was actively worshipped by the inhabitants of the city in the final centuries of the history of ancient Mesopotamia. Now, why is this important? Because I was finna come back over here to Exodus. So come over here to Exodus, this particular law, I believe. It might be Deuteronomy, forgive me. And this is pertaining to Succoth Benoth. Deuteronomy 23 and 18. You know what I'm saying? When you're looking at Succoth Benoth, it was the daughter of booths. It was a brothel. It was a place of idolatrous worship. And it's the foundation of your current whorehouses and strip clubs as it is this day. The same way about, coming up to the flagpole, in the Grove. That's why they had you gather around the flagpole when you was in school, because that was a place of idolatrous worship. Understand, son, as he told you in the book of Jeremiah, has a nation changed their gods? No, they have not. They have continued to worship their gods in a modern form clandestinely. They do not care if you are aware. They just want the populace to participate. So when the time comes that they do it in the open, you would have already been engineered mentally and spiritually to participate and go along with it with no qualms, cares, concerns, or pushback. Deuteronomy 23 and 18. You shall not bring the hire of a whore or the price of a dog into the house of Yahuwah your Elohim. That's right, 10K. For any vow, for even both abomination unto Yahuwah your Elohim. Now do you get an understanding why he tell you not to bring the price of a dog? You think of bringing the price of a dog, we're talking about a damn dog. But as you can see, dealing with these particular deities, you see how they got down. You can't pay him for no vow for that. Now you see why he tell you don't bring the price of a whore in here, because that's what they were doing in Succoth Benoth. We've talked about this before. That when you look at most of these ancient religions and their rites, they always had some manner of sexual deviancy and degeneracy attached to it. Why is that the case? I have my thoughts and opinions, but I won't share them with you right now, because I don't want to share them with you to influence your thought process, because I would prefer for you to research these things for yourself. That way you can get a better understanding of why you hear about all these sexual degenerate practices from these celebrities that everybody want to talk about. Because yes, some of that stuff is for power and control, but a lot of it is for the worship of the deities of antiquity that the people in high places in this world continue to worship and influence you to worship through social engineering, but you thinking you worshiping Jesus. But you thinking you worshiping the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Well, you around here worshiping Marduk with your freaky self. You freaky behind nigga. You a 69 God. Do you know what I'm talking about? The same way I know. See, and we didn't talk about this before. It's the same way because I know D asked me about this the other day. It's the same way we didn't talk about that when you look at pt4. Like, is the act of oral sex in itself worship to a deity? No. But did they do it in worship of a deity? Yes. You know what I'm talking about? You can research that and you can find it for yourself. You know what I'm saying? Now, you have to ask yourself, is this why they promote these particular activities? For you to unconsciously and to participate in ancient idolatrous rites and rituals and things of that sort? Highly likely. But you need to take the time to look up these things for yourself. And again, this is why I tell you when people hit you with, it's the Illuminati, it's devil worshiping. You know what I'm saying? That's just being intellectually lazy. It's easy to say it's the Illuminati, then take the time to actually find out that these are the rites and rituals of ancient civilizations of time gone by, and they ain't never stopped doing it. You see the karmic law of retribution and the conditioning. I mean, you have to understand something. It's the same token like this here. I told you I read this book, Niggas the Gods, Volume 1 and 2, when I was in high school. And I remember one of them chapters, right? They were talking about to be able to kill someone, you have to make them killable. Do you understand? So what does that mean? You wonder why the police or anybody else in America can do anything to you and nobody cares? Because they've already made you killable. How did they make you killable? By destroying and assassinating your image and your character. That's how they made you killable. Because now if I can do this, then no one will have any care or concern for when your life is taken because they do not see you as human. Now, why don't they see you as human? And guess what Black people turn around and do? Perpetuate and participate in the very things that make you killable and then shock when you're killed and nobody cares. You know what I'm saying? Because they perpetuated the social engineering by giving you the stereotype for you to participate in. Let me say, I say stereotype, the archetype, I should say. And you're participating in these archetypes, not even knowing that most of these archetypes are really archetype structures of deities from days gone by. You remember when we found a statue that's just like that Lil' Kim poster that Nicki Minaj redid, that Glorilla redid? That's Kali Ma. Y'all know that? Y'all know the Oscar statue is an ancient Egyptian deity. You know this. You know about the transgender god Happy. You know what I'm saying? So they play out these deities in real time for people, and it really destroys your character. See, it's different because they take the transgender god Happy. They don't want Happy to be destroyed. They want Happy to be venerated. You know what I'm saying? But see, some of these other let me just stop for right now. You see, the people on the left hand laugh at the term Illuminati because absolutely they do. They absolutely do. You have to be better than that. You have to be better than that. You have to be more well informed. You got children to raise, man. You don't want your children to have the ability to identify idolatrous worship when they see it, or you just want to be entertained. You know what I'm saying? And again, as it go, you just bobbing your head to the beat, or you paying attention to what these niggas saying to you. You know what I'm talking about? That's why you keep getting duped by these fake Israelite niggas, man, or these fake Christian niggas, because you a character your goddamn self. So of course, you're gonna just hop right along with a nigga who a character too. You have to start asking yourself, this stuff real to you? These niggas got going on, man? Because this stuff ain't real to me, man. That's why I don't fool with these niggas. I mean, 100% honest with you. You know what I'm talking about? Like, these niggas playing a role, man. You people playing a role. You know what I'm saying? Do you want information to debate, or do you want information so that you can elevate your standard, so you can elevate your thought process mentally, spiritually, emotionally, all the way around the board, so you can be able to identify things so you can make sure that you can protect your heart? Didn't that man tell you to guard your heart? Because the issues of life proceed from it. You protecting your inner man, or you walking around here like a doggone chicken with a turkey with his head in the ground. I don't want to hear that. That's going to disturb my reality. You need your reality disturbed. You know what I'm talking about? You need to stop living in the fantasy land, nigga. This ain't you should have stopped playing Candyland when you was a child. You know what I'm talking about? There has to come a time you got to step out of fantasy, man, and step into reality. How you gonna be the man that needs to be able to lead his wife and kids and to be a facilitator in his community if you living in a goddamn fantasy world 24/7, 365? Nigga, get into reality, my nigga. Or like my homeboy daddy told you, man, step outside and go face reality, man. The only way you're gonna be able to liberate your people in any shape, form, or fashion is to face reality and not run from it. Not try to act like these things don't exist. And stop playing into these tropes that these people use to manipulate you to keep you in a fantasy world so they can maintain control over you. Now, you're not going to overthrow their society. You don't want them to have control over your mind, body, soul, and spirit. You don't want them to have control over your lab, your inward man. These people should not be able to dictate how you think, move, and react based on how they shift society or whatever they put on TV or whatever goofy nigga they send in front of us talking about, here go your leaders. You know what I'm talking about? And that ain't got nothing, and that ain't just excluding these Israelite niggas, man. Who sent some of these goofy behind niggas, man? But all you care about, that's our people. I don't give a damn. This nigga's a weirdo. Something wrong with this nigga. This nigga's dishonorable. He's irreputable. He's incorrigible. He's a hypocrite. You know what I'm talking about? He's a degenerate. He's reprobate, and he a damn liar. But he know he Israelite, so you cool with that. His mama black. My God, today. Let me finish with Sokopanov. I'm sorry. I ain't mean to do that. I'm sorry. Back to Sokopanov, if you would. Let me read you about Ishma. You know, that's another ancient Semitic goddess. That is the goddess that is all she was mentioned in 2 Kings 17. Now, again, for some of you coming on here, I don't want to hear about this stuff. This is in the word. You ought to know. If you just going to read, but I get it. You know why I get it? Because most of the niggas don't even read 2 Kings 17. Most people don't read the book at all. If it ain't pertaining to what you want to debate. Now, I may have to redo that. I'm not going to guarantee you that because it took us a long time. It was a lot of videos and they were long about going over the entire kingdom. That's going from Samuel to Chronicles with every king and everything that went down. You know what I'm talking about? You have to take the time to look at those things, man, to see those things that's in there so you can catch the nuance. You can see how the people behave and everything that went along with that. Just like dude came into my David should have been killed. I say people always talk about David being forgiven. They don't talk about his punishment. A man called it punishment because people think God forgive but don't punish because that's what your mammy and your daddy did. Yahuwah don't raise kids like that. I can forgive you. I'm still going to bust you upside your head, though. Because you got to know its consequences and repercussions for going against me. You know what I'm saying? This is a very unaccountable group of people. I can tell you that. Most people, a lady had what type of loving God would send somebody to hell? The type that told you to repent and you didn't, and you said, F me, and act like it's not. How you think you're going to get the same reward as those who respected what I had to say and followed it? What makes you think you should get the same thing as them? If you had two sons and one son did what you said and the other didn't, you're going to give him the same reward that you gave to the son who obeyed you? I think not. I think you wouldn't. It shows me that's why this generation is bad based on how people raise their children, based on how they think God should do it. You know what I'm saying? That means you raise your children like that. That's why they lack accountability. That's why they lack discipline. That's why they despise structure and authority. That's why where you think they got it from? Like, come on, man. And like I said, these things can be imparted into a child without beating the brakes off of them. Because Yahuwah didn't beat the brakes off of you when you were coming in the land to impart these things to you. But you know why it was a problem for you? Because you hadn't been through any adversity like you thought you had been through in Egypt. So when he delivered you and it wasn't of any work of yourself and he gave you all these things that you didn't earn, you didn't appreciate it. And you still don't appreciate it now. That's why you're running the flag talking about we Israel. Man, I wouldn't be telling nobody that. I'd be telling people I'm a sinner. I need God's mercy and forgiveness. I wouldn't be running. That's not no flag you ought to be waving. That's proof positive that you caused this man's name to be blasphemed among the Gentiles. When you run around screaming we Israel and you in a land that's not yours, it's proof positive that your behavior caused this man's name to be dishonored. And you proud of it too. That ain't nothing to be proud of, man. You ought to humble yourself and seek his face with all manner of humility, like Jeremiah 50 say, with your head towards the ground, man. Saying, let us make an everlasting covenant with Yahuwah that cannot be broken. You ought to humble yourself because you the reason that these people be disrespecting this man's name. You the reason. That's right, Omar. But nobody want to talk about that. Nobody like to talk about that. Oh, I didn't even see that. Oh, I did see that. We don't want to talk about that. You the reason. You the reason why these people are atheists and talk all the trash that they talk and say all the things that they say. Because you caused this man's name to be blasphemed. But we don't want to talk about that. Because we think we need to tell these people we the Israelites. They don't want us to know we the Israelites. Man, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to give you a shocker, right? A spoiler alert. These people don't give a damn. I promise to you they don't care. You know the only people who care is people in religious circles. And you know why they care? Because it's taken from their membership. That's all they care about. They don't care. Nobody in the world power structure cares that you know you an Israelite. I promise they don't care. I promise they don't care. You knowing you an Israelite is no threat to their power. Because they'd rather you know you an Israelite than to know your God. See, they know if you know Yahuwah for real, you really have some power. But knowing you an Israelite, they know, yeah, we ain't worried about that. You can go ahead and put your outfits on. You don't talk about change your name. You know what I'm saying? Do whatever you want. That ain't no threat to us. Hell, they ain't no threat to Satan. Satan looking at me, nigga, I don't care nothing about that. Shoot, your forefathers knew that. I tap danced all over them niggas. See, well, I know y'all. I know we don't like to hear that because it shatters this. And I get it too from a psychological standpoint. You're talking about a people who've been called niggas, porch monkeys, hung from trees, beaten, raped, abused, and mistreated in ways that the English language could not even begin to properly encapsulate the level of brutality that this people has suffered. You understand what I'm telling you? So when you deal with that type of mental, physical, emotional, and psychological abuse, that is going to develop a strong inferiority complex. It's going to definitely diminish your self-worth. It's definitely going to diminish your self-value. It's going to diminish your self-love and your self-respect. That's a given. Anybody that says otherwise, you just lying to yourself because this is going to be transmitted from generation to generation. You know what I'm saying? So when you come out and you find that you this particular group of people and you like, hey, this people is the chosen people of God, they're the apple of his eye, woo, 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 woo. You use this as a means to inflate this low level of self-esteem, self-worth, self-value, self-love, self-respect to make yourself feel better about yourself while you're in a low and oppressed station. But in doing this, you are esteeming in your flesh as your forefathers did during the time of the apostles, and you neglect to actually develop yourself, to actually learn of your God, develop in his character, and actually be a pure representative of the God whose name you keep in your mouth, but you don't serve in truth or in spirit, like he said in Isaiah. You don't do it in righteousness and in truth, and you begin to be comfortable and cool with that because everyone around you is doing that also. So you begin to think that this is the normal way of doing things. And then you're telling yourself, these people scared when we find out who we are, because this is how you're going to inflate your level of self-importance in your mind, because you know that in reality on the world stage, nobody cares about what you got going on. They don't care. They don't care about no niggas in no outfits on no corners screaming, read. They don't care about that. They look at you as a joke because it's not a threat to their structure. You're not threatening them. See, John the Baptist was a threat to Herodias and Herod because he was speaking against what they had going on in front of the people as forth as calling out their sin. Ain't none of these niggas talking to Joe Biden talking about you can't do that. You ain't in Kamala's face talking about what she can and can't do according to the word of God. You harassing random white people on the street corner near you. That's not a threat to their economic system. That's not a threat to their political system. That's not a threat to anything they got going on. So they scared of you again because of what? How is the knowledge of you being an Israelite a threat to them? Ask yourself that question. You see how you just made it about yourself and not your God? Do you see the level of self-righteousness, how you justifying yourself rather than God? The same thing that got Job in trouble. You see how that's a dangerous mindset and it's completely a deleterious way of moving yourself that's going to find yourself burning in hell? But these niggas not gonna tell you that, because how else are they gonna be able to manipulate you to get that money up out of you and get that worship up out of you and get that validation from up out of you? You better peep the game and stop being lame. Shalom, Sister Keller. He said, I always thought about that. We had all this so-called knowledge and we stepped on it. Well, no, the conditions of the nations are not the Israelites' fault. That is a false narrative that people like to spin. See, you're supposed to be a light to the world by the example. As we already read from 2 Kings 17 and Micah chapter 4, these people were already worshiping their own gods anyway. Like you can read in Acts 16, where them people say, hey man, Paul, man, you messing with our money, man, and you teaching things that are not lawful for us to do, seeing that we are Romans. Common misconception. The Israelites were not going from country to country telling the people to put their idols down. Them people were worshiping their gods, but the worshiping your God and the benefits you were getting from your God was supposed to be the light to cause these people to say, clearly, we worshiping nothing. We need to go over here with them. You know what I'm saying? But we didn't want to do that because you wanted to be like them. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, the nations were doing what they always been doing. What they always been doing. That's why he sanctified you and set you apart over there. But most of us don't know what it means to set an example by your actions. Most of us think setting an example is running up on people and slapping them with information versus actually being representative of what it is that you proclaim. What you about, you represent it. You know what I'm saying? And when you scream it like you mean it. You know what I'm saying? And the only way you screaming it like you mean it, because you walk it like you talk it. You know what I'm talking about? Like that's your life. You ain't talking about it because you don't live it. See, we are accustomed in this generation to talking about things that we don't live. That's why the young boys want to be killers, but they ain't gonna kill nothing, let nothing be killed. You know what I'm saying? That's why some women want to purport themselves to be a harlot when really you're a pure, reserved, prude young woman, for lack of a better term. You ain't really no city girl like that. You ain't no hot girl like that. That's not who you are intrinsically, but you feel like you have to purport that to fit in. This is the world that we live in. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it, but this is what's going on outside. So when we get into the word, niggas act like they got to act like they righteous, but they really not. They got to act like they holy, but they really not. And you know how that's happened? Because we value information relaying or doctrinal command more than we actually do godly conduct and behavior. See, you've overvalued teaching, if you would, than actual godly behavior. See, your priorities are out of whack. Because it's better for a man to have a small amount of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding and be full of godliness, to have great knowledge, wisdom, and understanding and be filled with wickedness. Which one is better to you? But in the time we live in, which one is better? The great knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Niggas will take that and rather be wicked than to say, I don't have a lot of understanding, but I'm godly. My God, today. Lord have mercy. How we gonna win like this, man? We can't win like this. Ashima was a West Semitic god of fate, related to the Akkadian goddess Shemiti, who was a goddess in her own right, but also the title of other goddesses such as Damkina and Ishtar. Damkina, for example, was titled Benat Shemtai, or creator of fate. The name Ashima could be translated as the name, portion, or lot, depending on context. It is related to the same root as the Arabian Kisma and the Turkish Kismet. Ashima was one of the several deities worshipped in the individual cities who are mentioned specifically by name in 2 Kings 17 and 30. Let me read from this book why I even read Genesis chapter 6. I'm sorry, because it's almost 9. It's 9:15 now. This is the fallen angels, the heroes of mythology. The same with the sons of God and the mighty men, the 6th chapter of the first book of Moses. This is by Reverend John Fleming, A.B., incumbent ventry in Kildrum, Diocese of Ardifet, Rural Dean, Irish Society's missionary. This was published in 1879. I am not going to read the preface. Well, I will read a part of the preface. I am presently on page 6 if you have the PDF. If you would like the PDF, let me know. I'll send it to you. But it's preface, page 7. Last paragraph. Should any regard the subject of this book as of no practical value and be disposed to ask what profit is to be derived from its discussion, it might be sufficient perhaps to quote in reply the following words of a writer already named who has anticipated and answered the question. Some reader, says Dr. Maitland, may say, I often hear such language and never without pain and pity. What does it matter to us which opinion is right? Of what use would it be us to know when and why and how the angels fell? It is not a curious speculative question, and will not one opinion do quite as well as another? Such persons am not anxious to answer in detail, being persuaded in my own mind that it is an important duty to get rid of error as much as we can on all subjects, especially of all error which has fastened on the word of God. So now I already had this page highlighted and ready to go. It's not a long book, if you would, but it's not like we could read it all right now. I need to go to page 6. So what paragraph do I want to begin at? I'm going to start on page 5 in the introduction, second paragraph. Now he's going to mention something as in Grecian poetry in the paragraph preceding the paragraph that I'm starting at with the Titans. And if we need to discuss things as it pertains to the Titans, I don't think we've never talked about the Titans in detail, have we? I don't recall doing so. I got you, my G. And we'll talk about that because the reason why this is important, if we're looking at who the sons of God in Genesis 6 versus the sons of God in John 1 and 1 John 3 and all the other places where it's mentioned that you can become that, Luke 3 and 38, then we would have to determine certain things. Number one, when we look at certain mythological stories about deities, because of course, the angels could be referred to as gods, as forth as being rulers or divine creatures or divine judges, depending on the context of when the word God is used. Because, of course, some of you know that every time the word God is used, it is not necessarily referring to the Almighty One, Yahuwah of hosts. So, with that being said, of the aspect of deities having sex with women and producing offspring or demigods, which is what Hercules was. You know what I'm saying? He was a demigod character. I know I mentioned the thing with the soulmates, like take soulmates, Zeus was jealous of this here and he split man in half into 2 parts. And now man goes around looking for his other half. And that's where this stuff with soulmates come from. And you got people around here talking about you looking for your soulmate and you purporting Greek mythology and don't even know it. And you got people who live their life by this type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? And you don't even know where this stuff come from. And you're regurgitating, you ain't got no soulmate. You ain't got no better half you looking for. You know what I'm saying? Ain't no better half. Your half is your half. You find somebody who aligns with your morals, your values, your integrity, you know what I'm saying? Your honor, the things that you live by, and that's who you marry. In this day and time, since marriages are not arranged, that's who you marry. But if you're looking for a twin flame, man, you're dealing with all type of stuff that come from somewhere else, man. You don't even know what you're dealing with. You don't even know where this come from. It sounds good because you heard it from a Hollywood basement. You saw it in a movie. You heard it in a song. It stirred your emotions. And now you're living in a fantasy world just that fast. You know what I'm saying? Do you see how quick and smooth it is to get you boxed in the fantasy world? Yes, sir. I got you, Brother Rob. You see how fast it is to get you in? It's boom, just that fast. Now you worshiping, now you participating in the works of another God. Don't even know it. Don't even know it. My God, today. In Grecian mythology, an important place is occupied by certain powerful beings described as being of mingled heavenly and earthly, or divine and human origin, variously designated by the names giants, titans, demigods, heroes. With history of these classical scholars are familiar, but many of who in youth And that is spot on right there, Brother Shaul. Spot on. It's all centered around the exaltation of the will of man. Romance and soulmates got people depressed, calling themselves hopeless romantics. Yeah, and that's unfortunate. And you know what? And it was based off that show we were looking at last night. Some people call themselves hopeless romantics, but some people are looking for a love that they never had. You know what I'm saying? Or looking for a love that they perception didn't make them allow them to realize they had. I'm telling y'all just don't understand how many people were raised without love, man. Who or feel unloved for whatever reason, whether valid or because some people act like they weren't loved and they people loved them. You know what I'm saying? But some people are selfish and they wanted love how they wanted love, and if it didn't come like that, then it wasn't love. Just because you didn't want the love don't mean it wasn't love. You know what I'm saying? But that's a whole nother conversation. You know what I'm talking about? But you'll be surprised how many people out here, like I said, whether valid or invalid, feel unloved. And they out here looking for it. And Emma put the link in the chat for those of y'all who on here. I appreciate that. On Clubhouse, I should say. But yeah. That's a tough matter. You know what I'm saying? You'll be surprised, man. There's a lot of people out here, man. They don't feel love on there. They don't feel like nobody ever loved them, man. See, if you feel like you've been loved before, it's going to be hard for you to be able to understand the thought process of somebody who didn't feel like anybody loved or cared about them. And they out here looking for it. Male and female. This is not gender exclusive. That's why some people go from religion to religion. But nevertheless, with the history of these classical scholars are familiar, but many of you in youth or afterlife may have been acquainted with the giants and heroes of mythology. Only a few perhaps have regarded them otherwise than as imaginary beings, or the legends respecting them as all else the poetic factions intended either to amuse or at best represent certain changes in appearances of external nature. Few comparatively have believed that in these legends preserve the memorials of a real race, a race of beings of superhuman origin, who, by whatever names they may have been called in after times, or have extraordinary the sources to which heathen tradition ascribe their origin, or however monstrous the forms of the extravagant, the exploits which have been attributed to them, were living in a world at a remote period of history, a period when the earth saw men and spirits walking side by side, and have left behind them a name which has endured for 4,000 years. These, however, who believe that the pagan traditions were not pure inventions, not wholly without foundation, and who are able to see in those famous legends of the Greeks, which tell more of the earthly origin of giants and titans, of their wars with Saturn and Jupiter, of the marvelous feats which they performed, an unmistakable reference to real events, the brief narrative of which forms a portion of the Old Testament scripture, which may be read in the authorized English version in the 6th chapter of the book of Genesis, verses 1-4. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives, which they all chose. And Yahuwah said, my Ruach will not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh, yet in his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, they bare children to them, and they became mighty men which were old, men of renown. What were the two classes whose union produced a powerful and mighty race, which acquired such a bad eminence in the primordial world? Such is the question which naturally presents itself to the mind of the reader of this passage of Holy Scripture. Dr. Keto, in his words, we have stated it in reply that the first impression of many readers will be that the sons of God were angels and the daughters of men human females. And he adds, although not coinciding in opinion with those who adopt it, that this view of the subject may be entertained by many, both in ancient and modern times. We are not sure that a person reading the passage for the first time and unacquainted with any of the interpretations which have been assigned to it, the idea would at once suggest itself that the sons of God, to whom it represents, have taken to themselves wives from amongst the daughters of men were angels. So very remote, it is such an occurrence from the ordinary range of our conceptions. Not more likely, however, would be to conceive of them as descendants of the patriarch Seth, calling to mind when acquainted with it the usus laquende of the New Testament, he might probably suppose that the sons of God were certain pious men regenerated by the Spirit of God by observing the very intimate connection evidently implied in the narrative as having subsisted between the marriages of the sons of God and the daughters of men in the judgment of the deluge. For why otherwise has any mention of the alliances been made? He would naturally be at loss to conceive in what way the marriages of godly men could have contributed to bringing about a catastrophe so terrible. But were this person be informed of the original expression translated in our version, the sons of God is universally admitted to designate angels in any other place in the Hebrew scriptures in which it occurs, he would feel himself to call upon it to take the same signification in Genesis 6. And not only so, but in the fact of the union of this nature, the confounding two distinct orders of creatures and consequent production of a mixed race, partly angelic, partly human, and this derangement of the divine plan, he would probably discern a solution of difficulty which presented itself to mind, a sufficient explanation of the cause of the necessitated almost total extermination of those who were upon the earth. I'm gonna just put it in the chat over this on this side. So, with that being said, now we have to discuss Marduk and why Marduk is important to this particular conversation. Because Marduk is a part of why the thought process of angels having sex with men begin. And again, of course, Marduk is the deity associated with Succoth Benoth that we read in 2 Kings 17 and 30, where these niggas is freaky behind niggas, even 69 gods. And how all of these things come together and merge, and these conclusions are made. Because as you've seen from this author, and there's more things to look at in that, because this, like I said, if it's about 150 pages. And we still got some more parts to isolate and look at. Yeah, forget Joanne. She's just hard-headed. Marduk, the chief god of Babylon, the national god of Babylonian, ancient Mesopotamian mythology. He was the god of creation, justice, compassion, healing, magic, and fairness, and sometimes the god of thunderstorms and agriculture. He is in the Enuma Elish, which is the Babylonian creation story, and he defeated the forces of chaos, created order, and created the first humans. Of course, that's where people will look at that and say that aligns with the Genesis narrative. Marduk's symbol included horses, dogs, and a massive fork-tongued dragon. His symbol was the spade. He was depicted as a strong, powerful, bearded man in royal robes carrying a snake dragon and a spade. His temples were a ziggurat with a shrine of him on the top. Zerapintu is his consort. His star is Jupiter, and he is also known as Baal. Because we're going to have to get over here, so we'll look at a little bit more history of this individual, and then Lord willing, we'll go into that. Now, again, right, we started looking at what's in 1 John 3 and John chapter 1 as it pertains to John chapter 6. We've went through this before. We're just adding some outside stuff so you can see how certain things relate. Because you would have to look at, like we were talking about this earlier, people talk like, okay, the concept of angels having sex with women come from Enoch, but we'd have to go past that as far as other societies and their thought process on that. Because some people accept Enoch and some people don't. I'm not here to argue the validity of that particular book. You know what I'm saying? I don't have the strength, time, energy, or desire. You know what I'm talking about? If an individual wants to read it, by all means, read it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to knock you for it. Some people validate it, some people don't. You would have to, my only caveat with that is you would have to examine that and see, does it line up with Genesis to Malachi? And if you find a multitude of contradictions, you might have a reason to pause. And then that's just as simple as that. You know what I'm saying? And part of that, of course, the Nicene Creed is a part of that stuff in that, and the stuff that about the validity of the New Testament was sent, that we'll sit back and cross-examine and go through all that. But irregardless of what books are, what's the word I'm looking for? Canon, if you would. If you are a diligent researcher of any type and you accept Genesis to Malachi to be authoritative as far as this is the word of Yahuwah, then you would need to take the Book of Jubilees, the First Testament of Adam, Enoch, and all of these things. They should all meet in harmony. The 14 books of the Apocrypha, they should all meet in harmony. And that's just simple. And if they don't meet in harmony, then that means that you may need to scrutinize those things that are not harmonious. Instead of just jumping off the deep end, running your mouth. You know what I'm saying? That means you would need to take the time and examine, seek Yahuwah and pause. But most of us don't do that because you're so ready to cut up somebody's doctrine or this, that, there, and the third, man. You're supposed to be an adult. You know what I'm saying? You're supposed to be a man, cuz that's not how men operate. That's not how men function. That's childlike, cuz. And if you don't know something, it's okay to say, I don't know at this present time. I can't speak on that until I can give further investigation. You know, you don't have to speak on stuff because people are talking. You know what I'm saying? My big homie told me that a long time ago, man. 15 years old to be exact. Boy, don't be talking about stuff you don't know. You're going to run across somebody who do, and he's going to make you look a fool. But obviously in 2024, niggas don't mind talking about stuff they don't know about. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't recommend it. Because you're going to run across somebody who know what they're talking about. And the only thing you're going to do is you're going to fumble your words and you're going to come up with anything to try to justify yourself. And that's just, honestly, if your people didn't teach you better, that means they failed you. If your daddy didn't teach you that means he failed you as a man. And it is what it is. Don't get mad at me. Go talk to him. And if he did teach you that and you didn't listen, then you need to go in the bathroom and you need to cut the lights on. And you know what you need to do after that. Put some baby powder on your left hand. Put some baby powder on your right hand. Slap your hands together and then slap the fire at yourself for being stupid. You know what I'm saying? And do better. But let's continue. 3rd millennium BC. Marduk, along with the city of Babylon, was unimportant, sparsely attested to in the 3rd millennium BC. The earliest mention to Marduk comes from a fragmentary inscription, most likely dating to the early dynastic period. It is left by an unnamed ruler of the city, Bar-Ki-Bar, who constructed a temple for Marduk. A text from Farah period seems to mention Marduk without the divine determinative, and a fragment of a god list from Abu Salabik, likely Marduk written reverse sign order. A dubious reference to Marduk in Ur 3 period comes from the possible personal name of Marsin, is the star of Marduk. Although Johandi suggests that the god Martu, who appeared together with Enki and Dalmaguna in Ur 3 period, possibly refer instead similarly named Marduk, who is otherwise missing in Ur 3 documentation. Martu is later attested to have a different parentage. Anu and Urash, and Marduk is later considered to be the son of Enki and Ea. If so, this could be evidence that Marduk was already a part of the pantheon of Eriadu in Ur 3 period. Under Summa La El, Marduk appears in the oath in several years' names, namely year name 22, which recorded fashioning a throne for Marduk, and year name 24, which recorded making a statue for I keep pronouncing his old lady's name. Marduk also started to appear in theophoric names, which could become more frequent in the following decades, but would remain rare, appearing in less than 1% of names, although it would grow to 1 to 2% under Hammurabi. I know y'all know about Hammurabi. I know they taught y'all about Hammurabi. I know you know about that ugly bastard. During the reigns of Sabian, Apil, Sin, and Sin Millet, Marduk started to be mentioned outside the city of Babylon. It was invoked alongside local gods in the city subject to the Babylonian kings. Starting from the reign of Hammurabi, sanctuaries to Marduk were found in other cities. Let me stop right now because I've been kept going and it'd be 10:30. What will y'all willing? Hallelujah for Yahushua the word. Y'all willing? What we'll look at on the Shabbat is Marduk's association with the sons of God angels having sex with women. You know what I'm saying? Now we read the basis of Marduk, and we have to mention his consort as it pertains to Succoth Benoth. Now we mentioned Succoth Benoth, so that you could get a better idea with that Deuteronomy 23 and 18 about why you can't bring the price of a whore and the price of a dog into the house of Yahuwah. Now, we're getting all this to get to the point of how grace is poured into this man's lips so that how you can be shown to be accepted to become the sons of God. Why we even started looking at that anyway, because that would be the point. Now, of course, he made mention of something about part human and part angelic beings and the heroes of mythology. But you should know, I believe that Psalms 104 and 27, that he made his angels of flames of fire and their ministering spirits. You know what I'm talking about? Because we were talking about this earlier today. You know, the angels sat down, they ate and drank. You can read that. You know what I'm saying? But also, you see that Yahushua ate and drank with his apostles after resurrecting from the dead. And he said, you don't have a spirit. A spirit don't have flesh and bones as you see me have. Which, of course, y'all know pertains to what Adam said in the beginning when he said, flesh of my flesh, bone of my bones. And as you already, most of you here already know, the life is in the blood. Every last one of us know that if you lose too much blood, your organs will shut down because there would be no oxygen or the breath of life would not be able to be transported to your vital organs and you would be deceased. Well, the Malachim don't have those problems because they have the breath of Elohim or his Ruach HaKadosh, which is eternal, because they have no organs. That's why they don't have any blood. They have no need for organs and they have no need for blood. You know what I'm talking about? This is part of the things that you have to look at when you're talking about reproduction, as far as producing seminal fluid and the sperm that is contained in the seminal fluid to be able to inseminate someone's egg. You know what I'm saying? But nevertheless, I appreciate y'all time, man. I bless y'all, the house of Elohim, in the name of Yahushua. And I love y'all and I appreciate y'all. You know what I'm saying? We got a lot more stuff to look at. I can still push out those things on the New Testament that I sent out about a week or so ago. I'm really trying to give y'all ample amount of time to read it before we go through it. Because I say we're not taking a full 100% scholastic approach, because truth be told, that would be more reading of other books than reading of the text. And that's not really what the business that we in. You know what I'm saying? Yahuwah Baruch. Yes, sir, Zo. But the ability to approach things from a godly perspective of, do you have command of what it is that you say you believe? And that if a scholar approached you with something, that you would give him word from the standpoint of what you believe, not as in the point to destroy his scholarship, but your ability to properly and succinctly and clearly, with strong command, be able to elucidate on what you believe in. If this is what you say you've put your faithfulness in, or you attach your tikva or batak to, this is what you have attached your hope and expectation of reward to. Can you clearly and succinctly state that? Because every last one of you men should be able to do that. You know what I'm talking about? And you men who have wives, your wives should have the ability to do that also, regardless if they ever exercise that ability or not. That is not the point. The ability should be possessed. You know what I'm saying? Just going along and just being general and surface level, y'all already know how I see that. That is completely and totally unacceptable. You know what I'm saying? It's just unacceptable. And there's no excuse for it. You know what I'm saying? There's absolutely no excuse for something that you say is your life and you dedicating your life to, and you can't go 2 to 3 levels beneath the surface as it pertains to it. It's completely unacceptable. There's no excuse for it. There's not a rational explanation that you could even give to justify that. You know what I'm talking about? Because if we were in a scholastic environment, and God forbid we was in a collegiate level and you were paying for it, some of you niggas would be paying money to take that semester or that class again. You know what I'm talking about? Especially if your degree depended on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would you do that? You banking your life on this and you don't have a strong command of it? My God, today. Say religion has made us into spectators. I believe so. But I believe that to an extent. My opinion of what made us has become spectators is because we're lazy. You know what I'm saying? And why are we lazy? Because you're too involved in being entertained. You have too much of a desire to be contentious. You know what I'm talking about? and you don't have a desire to, dang, what my homeboy used to say when we were young, man. I forgot, it was some kung fu movie, man. We used to look at, man, and dude be like, man, I'm trained in the arts too. You know what I'm saying? You got to be trained in the arts, man. That's still not what I'm doing. I forgot what movie that was, man. He said, I'm a Renaissance man myself. You know what I'm saying? I'm a Renaissance man myself. You know what I'm saying? You got to be. I'm saying, I ain't saying you got to be no master intellectual or scholar, man, but you need to be well read on the things that are important to you and that you build your life around. You know what I'm saying? Everything can't just be about entertainment or how to get some money. You know what I'm saying? Because what good is it to leave money to your offspring if you leave your offspring with an empty brain? Or they don't even know who they are and what they come from, why they believe what they believe. Why do we hold to this code of honor? Why are these our values? Why is this our integrity? And why do we hold fast to this level of tamayim, this level of perfection, this level of completeness and wholeness and integrity that's attached to that? Why do we do that? You know what I'm saying? Let's see, Monte, you say, are you referring to when you put it now? Yeah. I didn't necessarily had to read it, but I definitely slid that in there for everybody to grab it and look at it. That's why we ain't jumped off into it yet, to give y'all a chance to go through it, to be able to follow along. That's when we were talking about my nigga apologetics and what that is. That's why I said we're not necessarily going to approach it from a pure scholastic standpoint. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, when you're dealing with apologetics, you have to source stuff that necessarily might be extra biblical sources, if you would. You know what I'm talking about? But for this level of apologetics that we're going to attack, because we're not doing this from the standpoint of debating somebody else. It's the standpoint of, okay, this person makes a claim that certain scriptures or certain epistle letters or whatever the case may be mean this or assert that or whatever the case may be. And we'll have to go through that and scripturally be able to defend whatever stance that we have. You know what I'm saying? From a scriptural standpoint, not necessarily from a scholastic standpoint. When you're dealing with a scholastic standpoint, you got to have sources. And truth be told, like, I don't have to sit down a week in advance to plot out what I'm gonna preach. You know what I'm saying? But when you're talking about dealing things from a scholastic level, depending on what it is that you're doing, you're going to need an ample amount of time to be able to do that, because you're going to have to sit down. You're going to have to source your information. You're going to have to cite your information. You're going to have to actually take the time to read the information to be able that you're citing proper sources to defend or debunk whatever it is that you are participating in apologetics in. That is a much, much longer process. You know what I'm saying? Much longer process. So, depending on, that's why I told you these people are not doing true apologetics, because they doing stuff in a week's time, 2 weeks time. You know what I'm saying? If somebody was doing genuine, true apologetics, in my humble opinion, probably 6 months to a year. 6 months minimum. You know what I'm saying? In my opinion, 6 months minimum. Because you know how, depending on whatever topic it is that you're defending or debunking, do you know how much time, how much information you got to gather and how much you got to read to be able to do that, and take into account, say you got a job or a family? Yeah, because that's a long process. You know what I'm saying? You're just not going to be able to YouTube that or Google that, which is what most people are doing. You know what I'm saying? Because you got to have like a literal bibliography, if you would, of all the sources that you would be citing in your attempt to debunk or prove what you're doing. That's why I say these niggas ain't apologists, man. These niggas just niggas who want to hear they self-talk. You know what I'm saying? Who really can't preach because God ain't gave them no word. You know what I'm saying? So this is how they can feel like they're important, by debating the word all day long, all day, every day, because they ain't got no congregation to serve. They ain't got no souls to save. They ain't got no word to give. You know what I'm saying? Nigga, work is trash, man. That's just my opinion. Some may agree with it, and some may not. But that's how I see it. You know what I'm saying? From my vantage point, from what I've been able to ascertain over time, and I could be wrong. You know, I'm not the end all be all to things, man. It's just my perspective. But again, I appreciate y'all. I bless y'all the house of Elohim in the name of Yahushua Yahuwah willing, man. We'll be back at it at 8:30 on the Shabbat. Yes, sir. Hey, Eric, man, Mama Steph dropped the link in the chat, man. Ah, man, praise Yahuwah, my veil, man. You know what I'm saying? So I'll give y'all a chance on over here on Clubhouse, man, because Mama Steph already dropped the link to the book in the side chat. I'll give y'all a chance to grab that before I slide up off here. My God, today. I think I got Brother Ellis' email though. Golly. Brother Ellis, I gotta figure out how to say it. It say email wise. Oh shoot, praise you. Email wise, it said the attachment too large. It didn't. I just tried to send it to you. It said a failure. I might have to try it again. It's a large PDF. I know Mama said it took a little minute for it to come on my end. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure y'all get it. I'll figure out a way to get it sent, man. It's in my file because he ain't got an iPhone. Because it's downloaded in my files on my phone. Because it's 30.1 MB, whatever the hell that means. Yeah. Yeah, I figured out. It ain't going through, man. She definitely did tell me it took her a second. I have to I'll get my old lady to do that, Eric. I appreciate that piece of information. Peace, Brother Nate, because that's outside the scope of my abilities at this point in my life. But I wager she know how to do it. So y'all with it, man, till Friday, man. We'll do it again. Well, hold on, brother Rob. Brother, if you come back over here on Clubhouse, you might be able to grab it if you didn't already. Let me know if you come back over here and try to open it up from the links you put in this chat. Yeah, he just came back in the room. Yeah, he on YouTube, Eric. See if you can open it from the link that Mother Gentry's put in the chat. She put it up there about 26 minutes ago. And tap on that and see if it'll open for you from there. Any of y'all that's on YouTube, if you in the club, if you a member of the Clubhouse room, if you want the PDF, you can come on Clubhouse and the link there. Yeah, Mama Steph, did she put what link in there? Yeah, you could drop a link on there, Eric, man. I thought Mama Steph might have put one on there. I'm not sure. I know she jumped on there real quick. My God, today. Yeah, that's why I said, if you hit the link, you should be able to save it to your phone. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Lord Marshman. I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go ahead on this now. See it, because the last time I tried to, but I think that was a YouTube link I was trying to put in the chat. It wouldn't let me do it. Okay, tenfold. I'm going to try to drop it here. See what happens. Okay, I just put the link in the chat, man. Let me know if y'all can see that link in the chat. Because I see it on here, but I don't see it reflect on my screen on his laptop. Man, let me know if y'all can see that link. Y'all can see that. Does that link show up in this live chat on YouTube? Because I don't see it on here. I don't know if it don't let me do that. Or I might just have to when the video ends, put it in the comments, and you can come back and grab it. But let me go ahead and shut this thing down, man. And we'll get it sorted out one way or another. You will.